Hello there and welcome to the News at 7, where we get to the heart of the day's stories and communities across Scotland. Tonight, a culture of mistrust and staffing shortages in one of the UK's busiest maternity units.
I feel I'm not being truthful with the women and their families when I tell them they're safe and this is the safest place for them. I don't always feel like it is.
We'll hear from the Chief Executive of NHS Lothian, who looks after the Royal Infirmary of Edinburgh. Also tonight, the ambulance workers who face regular abuse while doing their job.
And who are the first people to walk in? Is ourselves, the paramedics, and we're the ones that are going to get it.
And it's another busy night in sport. What have you got for us tonight, Sheila?
Yeah, we'll be discussing a big night of Premiership action as 10 of the 12 clubs are involved, and Martin O'Neill makes his Celtic return. And
the former MP who's got a starring role in a new BBC drama. Hi, I'm Laura McKeever. Welcome to the News at 7. A lot to talk about tonight, but let's start with a damning report into one of the busiest maternity units in the UK. An inspection at Edinburgh Royal Infirmary has found staff shortages and a culture of mistrust has led to patients being harmed. It found some expectant mothers had to wait more than 24 hours to be induced. Some of the healthcare staff expressed their concerns during a BBC investigation into maternity care. Their words are spoken by actors.
I feel I'm not being truthful with the women and their families when I tell them they're safe and this is the safest place for them. I don't always feel like it is.
There's no capacity in labour ward to take them. There's not a midwife to take them.
Well, the inspection was carried out by Health Improvement Scotland, and their Director of Quality Assurance, Eddie Doherty, explained what they discovered.
There are areas of significant concern, including things like the culture within the system, and also a really strong response about staffing. Terms used included things like mistrust. So there's a definite divide between the clinical staff and some of the managerial staff, which has led to things like adverse events being underreported and a feeling of escalation being difficult to do. Those are of concern because they do directly affect safety within any given system. Morale did seem low. That challenge when it comes to linking with their management teams really has left them feeling quite isolated and despondent at times. We had evidence of staff feeling quite upset during the conversations we've had with them, and again these are indicators of a system under pressure.
Well, our health correspondent Lisa Summers spoke to the head of NHS Lothian, Caroline Hiscox, about the standards of care at the maternity unit.
Well, Chief Executive, women who are due to have babies that have read this report today are going to be deeply concerned about what they're reading. Are they safe?
I fully appreciate and understand how difficult it is to read the reports that have been published today, for women, for people who use the service, for their families, for colleagues who work in the service. And that is something that I apologise will have added to the distress of people who were already anxious, or indeed taken some of the joy and what should be a really happy time away from them. But I can absolutely assure you that these services are safe. We have done significant work. You will know this from the publications last year and the media coverage around our whistleblowing, that we established an incredibly robust programme of improvement, and we have made significant changes and improvements in the things that were particularly highlighted in the whistleblowing, and we have gone broader than that.
I mean, as you know, we have been talking to midwives who work here. Also reflected in the HIS report were the fact that the majority felt overwhelmed. They were tearful. They were really worried about staff safety. Some midwives have been telling us that they at times feel terrified to come to work. But what do you say to them? Because they, like you say, want to do this job because they love it, but they feel they're unable to give that safe care.
I believe now, from the whistleblowing, that we absolutely have the right plan and programme of improvement in place. And I also recognise and fully understand and hear that they are not feeling the impact of that just now. So there are interim measures that we have to put in place, additional support, additional education, additional staff, to make sure that happens. And yes, that can be upsetting and distressing, so making sure that we've got the right pastoral care around our midwives.
What about workplace culture? Because again, the report points to the fact that staff were afraid to report adverse events because there may be repercussions, and that clearly, as the report says, has led to adverse outcomes for women. I mean, are you putting in place measures to do that? Are you actually being open and transparent with families when things go wrong?
What I have come to understand in relation to that specific part of the report is that I am assured that when it comes to an adverse outcome or an adverse event, then colleagues feel safe to report that. So they feel safe we use a system called DATEX, and they feel safe to say that there was an adverse outcome, or actually this wasn't right, and there's something potentially that was avoidable here.
Caroline Hiscox there of NHS Lothian speaking to our health correspondent Lisa Summers. Meanwhile, Scottish ambulance staff are frequently being subjected to violence, aggression and sexual harassment when they attend alcohol-related call-outs. That's according to a study believed to be the first of its kind from the University of Stirling. It reveals anxiety and frustration among ambulance staff and warns that alcohol-related call-outs have knock-on effects on responses to other patients. Araf Sadiq has first-hand experience of being harassed, attacked and racially abused during his 28-year career as a paramedic, and he's been speaking to our reporter Suzanne Allen.
I've been doing my job for 28 years. We always got a lot of respect from everybody, even your Saturday night drunk people. Lately, I would say since COVID, me personally have seen a huge increase in the way people look at us. I'm doing the same job as I was 5 years ago. 5 years ago we were getting clapped going out the door, going to work. Now we're going out to work, I'm apprehensive. I'm anxious because I don't know if I'm going to go out and come back, and that's the way I feel because of the amount of assaults that are taking place, serious assaults. Why they're happening, people are frustrated again with the demands on the health services, the hospitals, the knock-on effect with the ambulance service. People are not getting the service that they expect. They're not getting an ambulance right away. They're waiting. Their family members are deteriorating. There's alcohol involved. That risk goes up the scale, really up high.
What have you experienced?
I've been spat on, I've been punched. One of the worst ones was a number of years ago where I took a patient who was intoxicated, not overly intoxicated. In the ambulance, he wouldn't talk to me, he wouldn't respond. Took him into A&E department, and as soon as I got him in, he turned around, started swearing at me. Racial profanities, all kinds of profanities, and next minute he jumped up, started punching me, got me on the ground, kicking me. I had dislocated shoulder, injured my knee, broke my ribs. It knocked me for 6. My mental health suffered. I was off for quite a number of months, ended up with PTSD. It changed me as a person.
So do you think it's getting worse?
Yes. That was a number of years ago and it was unheard of. Now it's a regular occurrence.
Really? Paramedics go out and almost expect
Yeah.
they're going to be assaulted.
I shouldn't have to fear for myself when I'm going out whether I'm going to return back to my family. My family are scared when I go out on shift. I've had colleagues now who've been assaulted pretty bad that they had to leave the job. The ambulance service paramedics, PTSD is the highest in any kind of public sector. The numbers we've seen now with the research that's been done is not the actual number. Many of my colleagues are not reporting these incidents, they're just taking as a part of the job, and one of the reasons is that they're not getting prosecuted as they should be, so they're just thinking, what is the point?
Araf Sadiq talking to Suzanne Allen. Thank you very much for joining us on tonight's News at 7. More to come in the programme, including we hear from the SFA on plans to change the country's development programme for young footballers.
We've got a clear and cold night on the way with a widespread frost, but a sparkling start for tomorrow. I'll have all the weather details later in the programme.
Prison officers in Scotland say they're at crisis point as they deal with overcrowding and staff shortages across the country's jails. The prison population's reached a record high of nearly 8,500. To ease the pressure, the Scottish Government's proposing the emergency early release of 1,000 prisoners. Well, the Prison Officers Association, whose members work across the country's jails, interviewed 400 of them, and it's produced a report based on their experiences. Their General Secretary, Phil Fairley, joins us now to talk through some of the findings. Phil, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for being with us tonight on the news at 7. Let's just talk firstly about overcrowding. How much do you believe that is leading to the problems that this report's highlighting?
There's no question that the overcrowding is having a significant impact on a much wider problem alongside the business just now. Every one of those problems beyond the overcrowding is exacerbated by the record numbers of hold inside the prisons at the moment. We simply don't have the numbers of space for the prisoners that we've got, and we certainly don't have the numbers of staff to manage that safe and secure way. So everything that happens inside a prison is impacted in a negative way by the overcrowding.
Tell us more about what the officers are saying on the impact it has on them, and then we'll talk a bit about the prisoners themselves. But what impact is it having on officers?
I think the report itself is a pretty bleak read when you go through the information that's there, and it was provided directly from the staff. We asked Unity Consultant to conduct this report for us so that we talk directly to the staff and get them to tell us in their own words what it's like for them. And it's quite upsetting actually to read just how many of our staff, and hardened staff, have been in the service a long time and seen plenty of things in that time, starting to feel unsafe and unsure in their workplace. They're exhausted, they're stressed, they're worried about their own safety and others. They're concerned and frustrated about the fact that they can't do the job that they want to do. There's an increase in the numbers of staff who are going sick. There's an increase in the violence on the staff. There's an increase in the tension between the staff and the prisoners themselves, and the relationships starting to break down between them. And that is it's a really worrying sign for staff, because relationships between staff and prisoners is a key thing to making sure that things stay calm and controlled, and that people stay safe and secure inside the prisons.
And the government's proposing easing some of the pressure on numbers by the emergency release of around 1,000 inmates. Do you think that is the right response?
To be honest, I have got sympathy with the government. I know there's no quick, easy fix to resolve this issue overnight, so they need to do something. And as a trade union, if it's those kind of numbers that we're talking about, we absolutely do welcome that, because 1,000 being taken out of the system would make a genuine difference. It would allow the staff at least to catch their breath and recover a bit from the prolonged period they've been dealing with the numbers and the circumstances inside our prisons over a prolonged period of time. So 1,000 being taken out would make a significant difference. I think the real test is how long does it stay at that kind of level, because we've, from the last 2 attempts to do this, we did get some respite. It was short-lived, and that was the difficulty with it. So 1,000 is bigger than we've had before, and it might make a bigger difference. So we're not dismissing that as an option just now. And right now, it's a bit of breathing space that the staff badly need.
OK, Phil Fairley of the Scottish Prison Officers Association, thank you very much indeed for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
And in response to the report, a Scottish Government spokesperson said it's important that the voice of prison officers is heard, particularly given the complex population that they're managing. They remain committed, they said, to working with them and their trade union partners. Now, there's been further criticism of the UK Government's decision to house more than 300 asylum seekers at Cameron Barracks in Inverness, the news we brought you last night. The Home Office has apologised to the local MP for not consulting him about the decision, while Scotland's Social Justice Secretary said he first heard about the plan in September but didn't hear back from ministers in London. Our political correspondent Andrew Kerr is at Westminster.
The Cameron Barracks is now at the centre of a political storm. The Inverness MP said he first heard about the plan to house 300 asylum seekers there in an early morning phone call from the BBC. Now the Home Office has put out a contract worth £1 million to refurbish the Victorian property. In a moment, we'll hear from the Home Office Minister, where he apologises to the MP for a lack of notice. But first of all, here's the MP himself, Angus MacDonald.
Why was I not engaged in any sort of discussion about this? Why was the Scottish Government not engaged in conversation? And why were the Highland Council and other authorities just informed? They were not engaged, which was the word you used.
Too many people come to this country being sold a dream that they will be housed in a hotel and they'll be able to work illegally in our economy. Today we have announced that we've had our best ever year for illegal work raids, with 1,000 people deported as a result. But we have to break the model.
The Minister did say his officials have been engaging in advance, directly and regularly with the Scottish Government, the local council and service providers, and they'll continue to do so. Now, it's pretty clear that ministers want to crack down on this problem, but there's an issue, of course, when you have asylum seekers. At the end of the day, they need to be housed somewhere, and that does cause a political problem locally.
Andrew Kerr reporting from Westminster there. Right, let's get around it now. The stories making the BBC News app in Scotland. Heavy rainfall has led to widespread disruption on roads across Orkney. Part of the Gairnshore Road on the outskirts of Kirkwall had to be closed and a car was abandoned. Votes cast in next year's Scottish Parliament election will be counted the day after polls close rather than overnight. Those involved say it will improve engagement and reduce costs. Highland Council set out a planned new housing policy aimed at better supporting victims of domestic abuse. There were around 2,700 incidents between 2023 and 24. And tributes have been paid to an islander who helped make the Isle of Skye famous as Scotland's dinosaur island. Dugald Ross died at the age of 68 after a period of ill health. And it's emerged nearly 500,000 people attended this year's Tall Ships event in Aberdeen. It also generated £30 million worth of economic benefits. For more on these stories, you can scan the QR code there for you on the screen now. It will take you to the BBC Scotland News app and website, where there is plenty more for you, including how an Orkney library is using celebrity traitors to get more people reading. Now, the Scottish FA is launching a new project to try to encourage all adults to provide children with access to a football. It's part of a review into the country's youth development programme. They want to move away from organised games for young kids and get them comfortable with a ball. It comes as the SFA announced it was phasing out its performance schools programmes, which provide elite coaching in conjunction with regular schooling. I spoke to the SFA's Andy Gould about the changes.
When we looked at the various countries that have had successful national teams, one of the big patterns was the success of the grassroots programme, and that 0 to 12 aging stage was critical in helping to develop the fundamentals for young players to ensure that when they arrived at an academy, they had all the skill development, the physical development that would be required for the academy to then develop that talent further, to realise that towards first team football and the national team at a later stage.
So what are we talking about here? Going back to basics, you said 0 to 12, should more kids just simply have access to a football and the concept of running around kicking a ball, playing a basic game?
So first of all, that is very much part of the principle. At the very youngest ages, for example, we know that we feel there is a need to engage young people as early as 3 years of age. And we have, for example, through the Scottish Government, the baby box. There's an opportunity for us to do something like an activity box. And can the government get together and provide an opportunity to engage young people, get them physically literate, physically moving, build skill development at the very youngest ages and stages, which is a critical platform for involvement in sport, but also talent development at a later stage.
And for that later stage then, for your 12 plus, you're looking to sort of complement what the 5 clubs are already doing, is that the case?
Yeah, so there's a number of clubs that are already delivering performance school programmes. Our role, we feel, is to complement and work with the clubs, both in terms of the performance school programmes that they deliver, but also the academy programmes that are operating the length and breadth of the country. We have 27 academies in Scotland at the minute, and our role, we believe, is to support the academy structures with expertise, people, resources, to enable them to deliver the best possible environment for young talent to thrive and grow.
Just quickly, Andy, are you confident this is going to work, that we're going to see the benefits of these changes in future Scotland squads?
Yeah, we're very enthused about the prospect of developing a system, an ecosystem that can bring talent in at the youngest age groups, that can help that talent in terms of its fundamentals and then go on to achieve at the very highest level. It's a long-term plan and it will need a lot of time, care and attention, but we're very optimistic about the prospect of future players coming out of this new strategic approach.
OK, well, we'll see, won't we, down the line. Andy, good to hear from you today. Thank you so much for joining us on the News at 7.
Thank you very much.
Still to come, weather with Christopher, and we find out which former MP has a starring role in a new BBC drama. First though, Sheila is here with a host of games to talk about tonight.
Yeah, there sure is. It promises to be an action-packed night in the Scottish Premiership with 5 matches across the country. The returning Martin O'Neill here will take charge of Celtic for the first time since being appointed interim manager on Monday following the departure of Brendan Rodgers. And they face an in-form Falkirk side. League leaders Hearts, well, they're in Paisley to face St Mirren. Kilmarnock host an Aberdeen side in desperate need of a win. Dundee United travel to Motherwell and third-placed Hibernian welcome Rangers to Easter Road. To Celtic first then, and we were on hand to catch O'Neill arrive at Parkhead with the Northern Irishman receiving a warm welcome from supporters. And we caught up with a few fans to find out what they thought of his return after 20 years away.
Quite excited actually with Martin O'Neill being back. Hopefully maybe the players can get a bit of lift after what's happened.
It's just baffling the way things happened over a couple of hours, but it is what it is now. You have to get over it, building it, get a result tonight and bring it on to the weekend.
The short term, obviously, Martin O'Neill's in charge. Are you happy with that at the moment?
I think so. I think he'll steady the ship.
Well, it's been interesting, hasn't it? It has been interesting. The whole thing about Brendan Rodgers leaving or resigning last night or the night before. It's been interesting Martin O'Neill came in. I'm a big fan of Martin, hoping for big things tonight and a good result. Celtic back to winning ways.
Well, there's a man out of job what could bring us all together, and that's Ange Postecoglou. He brought us all together last time.
Well, earlier I spoke to Daily Mail football writer John McGarry, who'll be covering the game at Parkhead, to preview all the fixtures and to find out if he thinks Hearts can continue their fine form at St Mirren. I started by asking what he thought of Celtic's new interim boss and what fans can expect this evening.
I think this will be a really interesting evening. I mean, Celtic have been, I think it was 1888 was our first home game at Celtic Park, and obviously there's been so many different opponents and atmospheres down the years. But tonight you've got a very unique thing where there are going to be protests outside the front door at 7 o'clock, and then Martin O'Neill returning after 20 years to this arena that he called home for 5 years. So it's going to be a real kind of contrast in emotions. I think the protests against the way the club's been run will continue, but I think there'll be a pause. I think Martin O'Neill will be given his place as well, and there'll be kind of recognition of this hero who's coming back for, it might only be 3 or 4 games, but it'll be quite a night for him.
Can that in turn lift the players, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I was over at the press conference yesterday and we asked about this. I mean, one thing that his Celtic team back in the day had was incredible spirit. They scored a lot of late goals, and even though he's not had a lot of time to work with the players, in fact, no time at all, I think his presence will lift them. He's a manager who's really big on motivation, and I think after the last few weeks where the team really haven't been performing at all well, I think his presence alone can elevate Celtic's performance.
A few other interesting games on tonight. Hearts, of course, had that incredible victory over Celtic on Sunday. 8 points clear, but is tonight's game almost just as important when they go to St Mirren?
It certainly is. I mean, the victory over Celtic was only just out the way, and Derek McInnes was already talking about this, the importance of focusing on St Mirren. It's a venue that Hearts have found tricky down the years. St Mirren are probably the most physical team in the league. They make it extremely difficult for opponents wherever they go, but especially in Paisley. And even though Hearts are in an extremely good place at the moment, they're going to have to deliver another top-drawer display if they're to keep that 8-point gap intact.
The other games then, there's Motherwell against Dundee United, Kilmarnock against Aberdeen with Jimmy Talleen under a fair bit of pressure there, and Hibs against Rangers. What's your pick of the bunch there? And a lot of drama could be in store tonight.
Yeah, I mean, Danny Rule had a really tough opening night where the Rangers were really taken apart in Bergen last week. But they were, much better in the win over Kilmarnock at the weekend. It really gave him something to work with and gave the supporters something to hang on to. But also a really tough test tonight. Hibs have recovered after a little bit of an up and down start. People are talking about Hearts, Celtic, Rangers, a three-way title fight. Hibs are still right up there, and if they win tonight, they're maybe part of a conversation. Maybe not to win the league, but certainly to push the kind of the city rivals, and certainly Celtic and Rangers all the way. But they have drawn too many games, and this is a kind of game that they really need to pick up 3 points in.
John, thank you very much. Enjoy your evening at Celtic Park.
No problem, Sheila, anytime.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm quite excited about the games tonight, and I'm looking forward to Sports Scene later on.
You better go, you've got 5 to watch. Sheila, thank you. Just before the weather, what do politicians do when they have had enough of politics? Well, for one, former SNP MP, she's taken up acting. It's been announced that Mary Black will be in the new BBC Scotland drama Councils. In her first TV acting role, she'll be playing Detective Inspector Bridges. It's about a young group of 20-something solicitors living and working in Glasgow. And the former MP says she's looking forward to getting stuck in. Let's get stuck into the weather now, because it is going to get cold tonight, isn't it?
Yes.
We might be scraping the windscreens tomorrow morning.
Possibly, yes. I mean, it is the end of October.
It's
November at the weekend, actually.
Can't believe that.
Some sunshine around today, Laura, and also a fair number of showers as well. And the air is quite cool at times, so a dusting of snow on some of the hills there through parts of Perthshire. If you had the sunshine, it wasn't too bad at all, was it? Crisp blue sky there in Aberdeenshire, and crisp, clear conditions overnight tonight. It will be cold. Let me show you what's happening, because we've got low pressure with us. There's the jet stream diving to the south, and actually this low pressure will spin up towards our shores this time tomorrow night, and it's then sticking with us into the weekend, so pretty unsettled. But as I mentioned, overnight tonight with clear skies, with starry skies, it's cold. Temperatures there in towns and cities down to freezing, in the countryside colder. So it's a cold start to the day tomorrow, but a sparkling one, lots of sunshine. There will be some areas of mist and fog around. Those could be slow to lift, and just the chance of 1 or 2 showers up towards the Banff and Buchan coast there, and maybe in towards the Butt of Lewis and across Orkney and Shetland. But for most, it's a dry and fine but cold start. Then as we go through the morning towards lunchtime, dry and fine. However, it doesn't last. It never does it? We've got cloud and rain on the way, sweeping in from the southwest, and the winds really strengthening around the west coast, gale to severe gale force gusts. And then tomorrow night, you can see that low pressure, you can see the jet stream to the south, so really spinning up and bringing a very wet and windy spell overnight tomorrow night. So this is the picture as we start the day on Friday. The overnight rain is cleared. We've got some sunshine and a few showers, and that low pressure towards the northwest will then send a cold front across our shores through the afternoon. It's a little bit warmer actually on Friday, but certainly windy, and you've got that rain working its way eastwards. And then beyond that, into the weekend, as I mentioned, the low pressure just sort of situated towards the north and northwest, and that will send weather fronts and troughs our way through the course of the weekend and into next week too. So this is Saturday, some outbreaks of rain through the morning and then blustery showers into the afternoon. A few bright spells, temperatures back down again. And actually Sunday is similar. The showers focused in the west and northwest, something drier across southern Scotland and certainly south of the border too. Temperatures here in Scotland 10 or 11 Celsius. Here's the outlook. Bear in mind actually tomorrow is dry and fine until the rain arrives. Beyond that, it's unsettled. That's the forecast for now.
Christopher, thank you so much. And thank you so much for joining us on tonight's News at 7. Amy Irons will be here tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, and you can stay up to date on the BBC News Scotland website. From all of us here, stay warm, have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.